Hi, I'm John Malos. Welcome to this live edition of Connect with me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this Wednesday morning. Glad you're here. Today it's on the air, off the presses. We'll talk to a longtime journalist out with a new book. That's right, he's been here before, and he is here again today. You're welcome to call in at 436 MeTV option 11. Connect with me starts right now.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
Back here on the program on a Wednesday morning. I'm so glad you're here live on the showroom floor at Ventura TV. You're watching Connect with me, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the world of sports, but that's okay. It's on the air, off the presses too, because he's a longtime journalist, well known, well liked here in the Central Valley. So I hope you do call in at 436 MeTV option 11. Let's get right to it. You're watching us live on Comcast channel 375. If you don't have Comcast cable, it's okay. Do not lose any sleep over it. 13.1, 43.6 over-the-air broadcast with a digital outdoor television antenna. It's over-the-air broadcast, of course, and the replay is as well. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 13.6 YouTube, 8 o'clock tonight, 4.6 Biz TV. After that, if you want to go to your computer, maybe even your phone, your laptop, your iPad, go to youtube.com, then hit the / MeTV Fresno. You can scroll down to the icon where it says uploads, and you can catch all of our broadcast here the last 5 years or so, including today's program. So today it's on the air, off the presses. We're going to start this off with Major League Baseball, and it's a book about baseball. It's written by a fine journalist here. And just talking about baseball, you know, there are players around the country that drift around the minor leagues for an entire lifetime. You know, for most young boys, a lot of young boys, not most, but a lot of them, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, one of their dreams is to play Major League Baseball. A lot of them, in fact, I'd say most of them, never get there. I want to put up a picture on the screen and kind of set the tone for today's program. That's the wrong picture. I want to put up Carlos Moncrief. That's the first one right there. There he is. He now is a former San Francisco Giant, journeyman minor leaguer. Took him 10 years to get to the major league level. Finally called up by the Giants in July, got his first hit with the A's. Yesterday, designated for assignment. Now, what does that mean? He goes back to the minors or placed on waivers. Any team can pick him up. Is the dream over for him after drifting around for 10 years? Now change it. This book right here called Fate's Takeout Slide. It's a book written by George Genovese with Dan Taylor. Genovese, a longtime baseball scout. Taylor, a longtime respected journalist and sportscaster. The book features a number of baseball prospects who never made it to the big leagues, or they got there and for some reason or other, just like Carlos Moncrief of the Giants, did not last. It's a heartbreaking story for a lot of young men who want to make it to the major leagues. Two players featured in the book we'll talk about today. Live in our studio right now is Dan Taylor, a longtime journalist. And I got to say, this guy, formerly of ABC Channel 30, has a photographic memory. He has more knowledge than maybe the Encyclopedia Britannica. Good to see you this morning, Dan. How are you?
John, I'm great. Still marveling over how Perry Mason pulled that last one out.
I don't know.
We might need to put him on the Moncrief case and let him figure out what's happening.
But you know what? Mason made it to the major leagues.
That's right. That's right.
He really did.
That's right.
But you look at this Moncrief story, and the other reason I bring it up is because it really kind of symbolizes what your book is all about. Moncrief, a guy I've watched now the last month and a half with the Giants, and just yesterday, just last night, they designated him for reassignment, a guy that floundered around in the minor leagues, gets his shot, now he's out. Your book is all about that.
Right. It focuses on 14 former players, each of whom was expected to be the next great superstar in the game. We're talking Steve Chilcott, Paul Pettit, a number of guys like that. And for one reason or another, didn't make it. Injury, a couple of fatal a car crash, a plane crash, just really tragic, unfortunate circumstances.
You've been in broadcasting a long time, a well-respected journalist, and you've written how many books now, Dan?
Third, this is my third. It'll be out October 15th.
Okay, you've met a lot of baseball players in your time.
Right.
Why is it that some players, even the ones who have talent, just can't make it?
Well, there's a lot of factors, John. Sometimes it's their makeup, whether they have the heart, the determination, the ability to overcome tough times. George Genovese used to always say the first thing he looked for in a player was passion, because that's going to get you through the tough times. There's
Really?
a lot of players that come out of school with great skills.
Are you talking about passion like what Pete Rose had?
Well, just their love of the game. Do they want to be a ball player? Do they really aspire to be a successful professional player, or are they in it for the money? He would say, if I talk to a young man and ask, do you want to be a ball player? And they said, well, he lost interest in him. If they said, absolutely, I want to be a ball player, he knew they had the work ethic, they had the focus, they had the mindset, and they were a player that could overcome the difficult times.
Yeah. What prompted you, what urged you to write this book?
Well,
this is your third installment. This is your, I think, second appearance here on this program.
Right.
You came on with the previous book, a fabulous book. Now, I haven't read the book. Let's put it up on the screen again. Of course, it's called Fate's Takeout Slide. You're a baseball lover. You followed the game your entire life. What prompted you to write a book about, this is Heartbreak City, guys that just didn't make it?
Well, the last book I wrote was the autobiography of the great George Genovese.
Yeah.
Clearly the greatest scout of all time.
Yep.
But he was also a guy that knew everybody, you talk about a memory. There was a guy with an amazing memory, and as one friend said, he's the Forrest Gump of baseball. He's connected to everybody in the game. So yeah, it was always amazing to spend time with George and listening to him talk about guys. And in working on his autobiography, he told a lot of stories about players that didn't make it. And we started talking one day, and we thought, these guys have got to be remembered.
Yeah.
Because the game's forgotten these guys, and they shouldn't be forgotten, because these guys had immense talent. They just didn't get the chance to put it on display on the big stage, or for as long as some greats did, but they deserve to be remembered.
A guy like Moncrief, who was just put out the pasture here with 3 weeks left in the baseball season, what do you think goes through a guy, his mind now? A guy like that, 10 years it took him. He had to be jazzed up a month ago. Now, where does he go from here? How does he regroup mentally? I think he's in his late 20s, not exactly a young guy to play Major League Baseball, but he's got some time left. What does a guy like that do?
He's, my guess from the outside looking in, he's a AAA filler. He's a guy that you're going to see play for teams in the Coast League or International League. He's just going to be a AAA player probably, and hope that maybe there's an injury in whatever organization he's with, and he'll get another shot at the big leagues. But I don't see, he didn't establish himself. He really didn't do anything to establish himself with San Francisco, and I think he'd be hard pressed to probably get another shot.
Yeah, he probably would be. There are a lot of heartbreaking stories like this, but just to reiterate, Moncrief with the Giants, a month and a half, 8 for 38. He had 8 hits. He was drafted in the 14th round by Cleveland as a pitcher, went to the outfielder. His father, I read, was Homer Moncrief. I actually remember him. He was drafted by Detroit in 1980, but he never made it to the major leagues. So there are a lot of stories like this. We'll get into the book, and I want to talk specifically about some of the people that you feature, including Paul Pettit. We'll get into that. Dan Taylor is my guest today here on Connect with Me, MeTV Fresno, and it's 436 MeTV option 11. Back in just a moment.
When you like Ventura TV Appliance on Facebook, it's nice. But when you love the Whirlpool appliances we deliver, it's even better. Our website is cool, and it's a good place to start, but you really should touch the merchandise before you buy. Touch the new Whirlpool Ice Collection. It offers a modern style made to create an inspiring kitchen experience. Save big on this Whirlpool Black Ice or White Ice kitchen. Come into Ventura TV Appliance and touch the merchandise today.
When you're looking for KitchenAid innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified KitchenAid appliances save you energy and money and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
FRIGIDAIRE. It means the first electric refrigerator. The first compact electric range. Now, there's the FRIGIDAIRE Gallery Range with Symmetry double ovens. It's designed to cook multiple dishes at multiple temperatures, so you can prepare the entire meal at the same time. FRIGIDAIRE, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of FRIGIDAIRE appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Back here on the program with Dan Taylor, and I got to say, the old saying, oh, gee, I went up to the major leagues for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That's what Moncrief did.
That's right. That's right.
And a lot of these guys.
A lot of guys.
A lot of guys. I want to put up the first picture of Paul Pettit, number 1. Let's put up Paul Pettit, number 1. Who is and who was Paul Pettit? Because you feature him in the book, Pittsburgh Pirates.
Exactly. Paul
Go
may
ahead.
have been one of the most talented pitchers in the history of the game. He was probably the most coveted amateur player ever. Came out of Narbonne High School in Southern California in 1949. He's the first $100,000 player in baseball history, the first $100,000 bonus player. It was
What
a big
year
bidding
was
award.
that?
He signed in January of 1950. He was a late January graduate. And the rules back then, obviously, there was no draft back then. It was free-for-all. It was like college recruiting. So it was a bidding war for him. And Paul, it's a real long story, and not trying to sell books, but it's probably too long to fill the time here.
No, it's
but,
okay. You got some time.
but
Go ahead, Dan. That's fine.
When Paul came out of school, he actually signed he was the first player to also use an agent. He was the first player to use an agent as well as the first player to receive a $100,000 signing bonus. Well, Paul actually signed a contract with a movie producer in his senior year of high school. And so teams had to then negotiate with the movie producer for the rights to Paul's services. Pittsburgh went and struck a deal with this movie producer for the contract, and Paul and his father showed up for the contract signing, and they heard that it was $85,000 was the price, and Paul's father said, "My son's not signing anything for less than $100,000. Paul told me that the Pirates people told him later, "Oh, we're glad you only agreed to 100 because we were authorized to go to 150."
And these are all pictures of Paul Pettit.
Paul was an amazing player.
Left-hander, huh?
Absolutely. Left-handed pitcher. He was a tremendous athlete. When he signed, as I said, in January, 4 or 5 weeks later, he was in spring training down in San Bernardino with the Pittsburgh Pirates. They put him in an inter-squad game, pitched a 1-2-3 inning, and then they put him into an exhibition game against the New York Yankees, and he pitched a perfect inning. At that time, there was a bonus rule that if you signed for more than $5,000, you had to stay in the major leagues. And a lot of those guys weren't ready, and so their skills atrophied. They sat on the bench for an entire year. And in Paul's case, they had actually worked his contract through their New Orleans farm team. So he went to New Orleans, and his first game with the Pelicans, it was an exhibition game. Bob Perkey, who later pitched in the big leagues, started through the first 4 innings. Paul finished up through the last 5, and Perkey and Pettit threw a combined no-hitter.
Wow.
And the owners of the Pirates were watching. They were in the stands, and somebody asked after the game about if they were feeling good if that $100,000 bonus, and they said, "We wouldn't sell this boy for $1 million."
Is that right?
And he was playing for a manager, Hal Luby, who had been an infielder in the big leagues, not a former pitcher, not a pitching coach, not a pitching guy at all. And he just didn't like Paul's delivery. Paul had a bit of hesitation when he brought the knee up in the midpoint of his delivery, and Luby ordered him to change his mechanics. And Paul said he instantly started feeling a tightness in his shoulder. And then in his 3rd professional game, in the 2nd inning of the game, he blew out his elbow. And it was gone.
Paul Pettit blew out his elbow
His
in the
third professional
third
game.
professional game.
Yeah.
He still got his money, I assume.
Well, he did, and he was in the Pirate organization for the full 10 years. It was spread out. He received $10,000 a year for 10 years.
Okay.
And he was in the organization for a full 10 years. They pitched him, but then in 1954, Branch Rickey then came in to run the organization. And he wasn't a fan of Paul's. At first he thought Paul just wasn't mentally tough and just didn't have a pain threshold to speak of.
Yeah, and you told me the other day that Branch Rickey had said this about Paul Pettit, that he just doesn't throw hard enough.
Paul did get to the big leagues. When he was 19, he broke camp with the Pirates, got into an early game in the Polo Grounds against the New York Giants. Rickey traditionally would sit behind first base, but in this case, when Pettit came in, he moved behind home plate. And writers asked him, and Pettit threw a perfect inning, but writers asked Rickey after the game what he thought about him, and made a comment. You know, he was the only guy to pitch a perfect inning in a blowout loss, and Rickey said, the boy doesn't throw hard enough for me, and he immediately sent Paul back to the minor leagues. But in 1954, Paul had been at Hollywood, the Pirates' top farm team in the Coast League, and they decided enough of the pitching. It's not working. He's in pain every time he throws the ball, and they decided they were going to make him a position player.
Does anybody know why this happened? How and why he just blew his elbow
Just poor
out?
mechanics. It was just poor mechanics. And actually, Paul, in his senior year of high school, his next to last game, Paul really threw a lot. In fact, Genovese told me he went and watched him one day when Paul was in high school, and he said he was phenomenal. But he was really afraid because the scouts were arranging games for Paul's high school team with USC and UCLA. And Paul said these games were played under the strictest confidence. Nobody was permitted to call and tell the press. And Paul just overwhelmed these guys because the scouts wanted to see his skills against tougher competition before they made the big outlay.
Let me ask you something about, because you mentioned poor mechanics with Paul Pettit, and I want to get to today's game before I get into the comparisons of Pettit and Sandy Koufax. I want to talk about this first before we do that, and that is there are a lot of pitchers that get into the major leagues, and for whatever reason, they develop these poor habits. Now, I don't know what the case is with these two pitchers. They may not have poor habits. They're two of the best pitchers in baseball. But the other day, Madison Bumgarner gave up 3 home runs, okay, at AT&T Park. Then he hits a home run himself. Kershaw's been on the DL forever, okay. He's got kind of a weird delivery. When these guys go into slumps, and you see Bumgarner giving up 3 home runs, and then Kershaw doesn't pitch that well, is it mechanics with them?
Well, Kershaw's situation, and I've talked to people close to the Dodgers and close to Kershaw who do say that his mechanics really do put a lot of tension on the back. And I know one longtime guy around the Dodgers told me that as much as he loves Kershaw and as great as he is, he always felt the day was going to come where the back problems would manifest, and they have. And you know, anybody who's had back problems will tell you, once there, always there. So I think that's an issue. Bumgarner's case, I think this is a lost season for him because of the injury that he suffered, the time that he missed, trying to get back in shape. I think it's a lost season for him. It's been a tough year for him.
He hurt his arm to the point where he's just not the same pitcher.
Well, no, I don't think it's that. I think, you know, when he had the motorbike accident and injured his shoulder, it was out for a long time, and I think that it's just going to be a challenging year for him to really get all of his mechanics back in form.
That
like
could take a full year to get back.
I think he'll be fine next year. I don't think he's anywhere near a point where, you know, his skills are diminishing at all. I just think he was out a long time, and getting back in shape, and I think it's a tough year for him. So,
but pitchers do lose their mechanics and they lose their way sometimes.
Oh, they do
when they get in the major leagues. For whatever reason. Maybe they have a different pitching coach. Maybe they're looking at too much video.
Well, they could be high maintenance guys. They could have players that maybe don't have great coaching in their background and don't have all the little idiosyncrasies to get themselves back in sync. They say for every starting pitcher, for every 5 games a starting pitcher throws, you're going to have 1 where you got your stuff. You're going to have 2 where your stuff's abysmal, and you're going to have another 2 where your stuff is just not going to be good. And the key to being a great starting pitcher is finding a way to win on those 4 games when you don't have your great stuff.
So if you have your good stuff 1 out of 5 games, you're doing pretty good?
Absolutely.
in the major leagues?
Absolutely, yes.
Really? That's just like, saying that a hitter, if you strike out 7 out of 10 times, you're batting 300.
That's right. That's right.
It's amazing, huh?
That's right.
You can hit 3 home runs and then strike out the other 7 times.
Well, when you think about it, I mean, you look at the arm, and it's not easy to repeat that slot, that arm angle every time through. And there's so many little components to a pitching delivery, and they all have to be right for you to be 100% flawless in your mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We're talking to Dan Taylor. If you want to call in, we have an open phone line, 436-MeTV, option 11. The name of the book is Fate's Takeout Slide. It's about a lot of these guys that either made it or didn't make it for whatever reason. We'll get into more of Paul Pettit and the comparison to Sandy Koufax. Do you remember him? Back in a moment.
Want to create something extraordinary? Create perfection. Our lifestyle appliances make it easy. KitchenAid, Ventura TV appliance, and you, when only the best will do.
Not sure what you're watching? Want to see what's coming up next? Or just want to browse what's on without the hassle of flipping channels? Your wish has come true. Now you can view schedules for all the digital TV channels available in the Central Valley. Get local weather updates and forecasts, and listen to nationally syndicated Biz Talk Radio, all on KVHF 4.1. Rescan your TV now, then tune in to Digital Channel 4.1 to start enjoying the all-new TV Guide.
Back here on the program, having a lot of fun talking baseball. And I'll tell you what, I feel like I'm talking to Bob Costas here, or Al Michaels. I mean, this guy knows more about baseball than anyone. Anyway, and so you've done this your entire life, and we do have a phone call. You're a popular guy. Let's take this call here. Good morning, caller. You're on the air with Dan Taylor, the one and only. What's your question? What's your comment? Glad you called.
Yeah, Dan. Let me ask you that. I'm a Giant fan. But back in the heydays, I thought that the Dodgers had the best 1-2 with Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale. I think that was probably the biggest names, I mean, with the Dodgers. And the Giants had Marshall. I mean, but the thing is, 1-2 pitchers, I thought they were outstanding, What do you think? That's a question to you, Dan.
No, I would agree. Koufax Drysdale, that was a great 1-2. They were tough to beat, and then the Giants, when they had Gaylord Perry come along there in the mid '60s, late '60s, then they had a great 1-2. And I don't know who had the brilliant idea in the Giant front office to trade Gaylord Perry, but
it was Marichal and Perry.
Oh, it was tremendous.
Yeah.
Interesting story, and it was in the last book where Tom Seaver. There was a big fiasco with his signing with Atlanta out of USC, and he was made a free agent. And every team had an opportunity, except for Atlanta, to bid for Tom Seaver. And they were going to have a blind draw out of a hat.
Oh.
And Genovese called the Giants and said, we've got to get in there. We've got to get in on this guy. And when it was announced that the Mets had gotten him, only 4 teams had entered the draw, and the Giants were not one of them. And Genovese called the scouting director and said, what happened? And he said, well, Chub Feeney felt like with Marichal and Perry, we didn't need anybody else.
We didn't need a Hall of Famer like Tom
Exactly.
Seaver. We'll pass.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Amazing. And I don't have to tell you, I was a kid when this happened, but how many times did the Giants finish in second place back in the 60s? They could have used him.
Was it like 7 straight years or something like that? You're right. It was unbelievable all the years.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to Paul Pettit now. Heartbreak story.
Yeah.
Heartbreak kid. A lot of heartbreak stories in baseball just like his. And what makes it even more heartbreaking, I don't know how Paul felt about it, but I want to roll the videotape on Sandy Koufax, and you go ahead and describe Koufax's delivery, compare it to Paul Pettit.
Well,
videotape comes up
it's interesting because I was speaking with Paul's high school catcher, a guy named Gar Myers. And I asked him, because he caught 6 years in the Dodger organization and caught future major leaguers, Roger Craig, Johnny Potter, there's a number of others. And you look at Koufax, how he has this over-the-top arm angle right there. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I was asking Gar how he would compare Paul with any of the guys that he caught in the Dodger organization. And Gar kind of changed the subject, and he said, in all my years in the organization, there was only one pitcher I ever saw who I would compare with Paul. He said he had the similar over-the-top, as you see there with Koufax, a very similar over-the-top arm angle like Paul had. And he said this pitcher had a curveball that had more bite than Paul's did, but he said Paul's fastball was better than this guy's, and that's when he sprang on me that the guy was that he was referring to was that and he was comparing Paul to was the great Sandy Koufax.
So Pettit, he was saying, had a better fastball?
Yes.
Than Sandy Koufax?
Than Sandy Koufax, yes.
As you know, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but Koufax had the best breaking stuff.
Phenomenal curveball.
Maybe the best ever in baseball.
Well, those 5 years might have been the best left-hander in the history of the game.
Yeah. How many no-hitters for Koufax? 4?
4. He averaged 25 to 27 complete games a year.
Yeah, nobody does that anymore.
No, not at all.
Nobody does that. By the way, why don't they, do you think?
Well, I think we babied them. I think we look at the pitchers as investments now, and they're babied. I ask, why these guys were throwing 20, 25 complete games a year, and we weren't hearing of the injuries that we're hearing about now. And a lot of the feedback I get is that these guys, back in that era, they knew when to, quote-unquote, take an inning off, when they could ease off and throw breaking balls, throw change-ups, maybe take a little something off the fastball and get through the inning that way.
Even a guy like Drysdale and Gibson?
Absolutely.
They took an inning off.
Well, and Marichal as well, and that's how they would get through it. Now it's all-out max effort on every single pitch.
Yeah, I'm talking with Dan Taylor here, and I want to promote his book here a little bit. So let's put the book cover back up on the screen before we go to the next topic here, and that is it's called Fate's Takeout Slide. Where can they buy the book? How many pages? Can they buy it online?
Yeah, it's available. It's available online. Last check, McFarlane Company is our publisher, and they're to begin. I think October 15th is when it comes out, and it should be available from what I've seen on Amazon.com and also Barnes & Noble.
Okay, Barnes & Noble will have it.
Online, not sure. It's select stores. You never know what stores they will stock.
Did you ever think you'd be an author?
No, never.
After all these years of broadcasting as a
never.
journalist?
It's just something that happened. Yeah.
Really? You kind of. So how did that happen?
Oh, it's a long story, but
give us the 30-second version.
I don't even know if that's possible. But I have a great friend that is an author in England, and he wrote the autobiography of the great David Beckham, the great soccer star. And
yeah.
So there was a story that we were discussing, and he was pretty convinced that it would make a book, and introduced me to his agent, and that's how it came about.
Did you know you could write?
No, because as you know, John, broadcast writing and long writing are apples and oranges. They're completely different.
I know.
Different worlds. Never had any thought. When I got into it, I'll be honest, I felt guilty. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that's their life's dream. That's their ambition, is to become a published author. And here this opportunity just fell into my lap. So I really felt guilty about it. But it's something that I enjoy. It's a great form of creative expression. It combines 3 things that I enjoy doing: storytelling, baseball, and research.
Yeah, I know. I mean, when I was the editor out at the Sanger Herald quite a few years ago, I mean, I come from a broadcast writing background too. I had to totally retool my thinking.
Yes.
Tell the story. I kept telling myself, tell the story, but don't tell it as if you're a broadcaster. And that's tough to do. Was it tough for you?
It was very challenging, and I'm thankful I had really good people that I could go to for help. That gave me great feedback, and they were tremendous, and it's helped a lot.
All right, you feature 14 people in the book. All right, 14 heartbreak stories. One of them is Jim Baxis.
Jim Baxis.
All right, talk
about
him.
You would pick the Greek.
Well, I'm Greek, so I had to pick a Greek, right? I mean, my Greek friends would say, "Why didn't you talk about Baxis? He's Greek." All right, so there's a comparison to who? Pie Traynor.
Well,
oh my God.
Jim Baxis played with George Genovese on the 1949 Hollywood Stars.
Okay.
So at the age of 18, 19, he's 2 years removed from high school, and Jim Baxis is in the Pacific Coast League. Mm-hmm. And the Pacific, you have to remember, Major League Baseball was only 8 teams then.
Yeah.
So in each league, so it was a different world, and he's at the highest level of the minor leagues. Jim Baxis was, and just had a phenomenal spring. And Fred Haney was the manager. Later won 2 World Series went to 2 World Series with the Milwaukee Braves, and Fred went with him and stuck with Baxis and had a tremendous year. I mean, he was in the running all year for MVP in the Pacific Coast League. Well, along the way, Jim was a ladies' man. And I talked to several of the surviving members of that team, and they all said that, in particular, there was one actress who would come out to the games, and she latched onto him. And I guess at the end of the season, Baxis was property of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Okay.
And at the end of the season, he got a contract that called for another year in the minor leagues, and this actress picked up the phone and called Branch Rickey and read him the riot act and said, this is what you're going to pay him, this is where you're going to play him. And Branch Rickey hung up the phone and pretty much wrote Jim Baxis off.
That's how he ended his career?
Well, I mean,
that's how his career ended.
For the most part, he went into, and people have told me, many people who were in the organization said when you were in Branch Rickey's doghouse, there was no escape hatch.
So his career was basically done.
For the most part, yes. Now, he went into the service after. When he came back, he had a bit of a long swing, had a tendency to strike out. About 10 years later, he did get to the big leagues briefly. With the Dodgers. I believe their first season in the Coliseum. He was the opening day third baseman because Junior Gilliam was injured. Yeah. And then he was sent down. He refused to go down. They traded him to Cleveland. I think he rubbed some people the wrong way in the Cleveland organization, and he was released.
Yeah, how do you make a comparison to Pie Traynor? And I know who Pie Traynor is. I just had to look up I looked up his stats.
One of the all-time greats.
One of the all-time great third basemen for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Played from 1920 to 1937. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer.
Right.
It goes without saying.
Right.
So how does Baxis, a Greek, compare to Pie Traynor?
Well, the way it came about was because he was owned by Brooklyn. There was a lot of question about how good he was performing and what Brooklyn and Branch Rickey thought of him.
Oh, okay.
And Branch Rickey at one point said, I wouldn't trade him for anybody. And I think Fred Haney, his manager at Hollywood, said, I think this kid's the next Pie Traynor.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that's how it
came about. That comparison came about, yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. Got to take a break here. Dan Taylor is our guest. And let's put the book up on the screen just one more time here. We'll put it on a couple of more times before we close out the show today. It's called Fate's Takeout Slide, written by Dan Taylor with George Genovese, of course, the great baseball scout, maybe the greatest baseball scout of all time in baseball history. 436 MeTV option 11. Connect with me on MeTV Fresno. Back in just a moment.
When you like Ventura TV Appliance on Facebook, it's nice. But when you love the KitchenAid appliances we deliver, it's even better. Our website is cool, and it's a good place to start. But you really should touch the merchandise before you buy. Save big with KitchenAid. Right now, get up to a $1,000 prepaid MasterCard when you purchase select KitchenAid appliances. Get the best selection, price, and service in town without waiting. Come in to Ventura TV Appliance and touch the merchandise today.
When you're looking for Whirlpool innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified Whirlpool appliances save you energy and money and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Dan Taylor's here. You're there. 436 MeTV option 11. Give me a couple of good more nuggets, maybe a couple of more good nuggets from the book right after the phone call here. You talk about one player that was involved in some kind of a crash, right?
Well, Nestor Chavez was the Giants.
Hang on, caller. Get to you in a moment.
The Giants were talking about Nestor Chavez being the next Juan Marichal. They had signed him at 15 out of Venezuela. Just tremendous numbers in the minor leagues. Got to the big leagues as a September call-up. Mm-hmm. Had pitched a near-perfect game in the winter ball in Venezuela, and then in March of '69, the plane that he was on coming to spring training out of Venezuela crashed. Everybody was killed.
Man, a lot of heartburn. When you know Roberto Clemente, same thing.
Right.
Remember on New Year's Eve, I believe.
Exactly.
And then you had the former Dodger catcher involved in a car crash back
Roy Campanella.
Roy Campanella. That was in the late 50s, was it?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly.
Or early 60s.
No, it was late 50s before they came out west. And then one of the chapters in the book is on Bill Seinsoth, who was the 1968 college MVP of the College World Series. Big power hitting first baseman for USC. The following year was the MVP. It was the first round draft pick of the Dodgers. They sent him straight to Bakersfield in the Cal League. He hit, in the last month and a half of the season, hit 10 home runs, and on his drive home was killed in a single-car rollover accident. And a lot of his former teammates that I talked to said that if Bill Seinsoth hadn't been killed, baseball never would have heard of Steve Garvey, because Seinsoth would have been the first baseman for 15 years in L.A.
Wow. See how things happen? They
Yep.
happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
Fate, I guess fate. It's the
Absolutely.
name of your book.
Yeah, I think these
There it
guys
is
deserve to
there.
be-
That's the proper name. I mean, it's fate's takeout slide in baseball. I mean, fate has a lot of I think has a lot of input in not only baseball but in everyday life.
Absolutely.
So, caller, you're on the air with Dan Taylor. Go ahead.
Dan, I'd like to just ask you a direct question. Has there ever been a team, other than the Giants, had three brothers playing the outfield? So we're talking about Jesus, Matty, and Felipe. The
Yeah.
Alou brothers. There was three of them.
Yeah.
And I know they played with the Giants. And one more. The Dodgers had this one player that I always thought was the Penguin, Ron Say. You think he was as good as any ball player presently? But I'd like to know if there's another team other than the Giants had three brothers playing in the same team. Thank you.
And tell me again that your second question. Who was the Dodger player?
Ron Say.
Oh, Ron Say.
Yeah.
Ron Say was a tremendous.
Thank you.
I think you have to give a lot of credit when you look at Ron Say and you think about how scouts are.
The
how
Penguin.
Yeah, exactly. and I got to give a lot of credit to the scout and the scouting director who made that call, because same with Hunter Pence, and you look at his awkward throwing motion.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, somebody said, we got to ignore how awkward that looks because this guy gets it done. And I
Yeah.
think the same with Ron Say. He was Genovese was really urging the Giants to take him. In fact, he played for an amateur team called the Cheney Studs up in Washington. Well, Ben Cheney, who was a lumberman in Washington, had a small piece of the Giants, and he had been urging the Giants to sign Ron Say as well.
Yeah.
And Genovese had seen him when Washington State came down to play UCLA and SC, and he liked him, and he put in that the Giants should take him.
Sure.
And they didn't. The Dodgers ended up taking him.
Yeah, when I was in my youth, that seemed like maybe about 100 years ago, when I was a sports guy, I never called him by his name, Ron Say. I always called him by the Penguin, and he was so well known. How do you compare him to Justin Turner, the third baseman for the Dodgers
There's
now?
probably a good comparison. That's probably a good comparison in terms of their skill set and their productivity. Yeah, I think Say was a tremendously productive player, and Turner's amazing. I mean, the Mets discarded him, and you look at what the Dodgers have done, whether it's the hitting coach tweaking him or just him adopting a different approach at the plate. But that's been tremendous. And back to his first question, obviously
the Alou brothers.
Well, the Alou brothers. That was a terrific story for the Giants at the time in the '60s when Jesus, Matty, and Felipe played in the same outfield. Each ultimately was traded. But you certainly had the DiMaggio brothers, although they're never in the same outfield. I'm curious, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, if they ever played in the Coast League. I don't think they ever played in the same outfield with the San Francisco Seals. I don't think so. I know there have been brother combinations outfield, but
not like this.
No, I don't think so.
He had
I think
Jesus, Felipe Alou, and Matty Alou.
Right.
And
Right.
I saw them play because my father used to take me to the Giant games when I was just a toddler, and I saw all those Giant greats in the '60s, and I saw the Dodger greats too. I
Right.
saw Koufax pitch,
Right.
Drysdale, as you did when you were a kid.
Yeah.
I feel fortunate that I saw those. I call them relics now. I mean, those are man. They don't make them like that anymore. I hate to say it, but those were great times in the '60s. Those were great players. I saw all the greats. Bob Gibson. I saw the Red Sox. I saw Yastrzemski. Help me out here. Who else did I see? I saw all the biggies because Oakland and San Francisco, American League, National League.
Right.
They didn't have interleague play at that time.
Right.
So you saw some of the same players, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. It was a treat to get out and see these guys. And of course, you have to remember that baseball was the game back then. Baseball was the game.
No
and so
soccer. Nobody was playing soccer back
right.
then.
Basketball, football. I mean,
it was secondary.
Right. And kids played multiple sports in school, and baseball was the game. That's what you look at so many different communities, and immigrant kids used baseball to assimilate. But baseball was what kids played, and it's not the same now.
And I still remember the managers for the Cardinals back in the 60s, Red Schoendienst, right?
Former
Walter
second baseman
Alston for the Dodgers,
yeah.
And Herman Franks for the
Herman
Giants.
Franks, right.
You remember all those guys.
Oh, absolutely. Frank's kind of alluding to this breaking story with the Yankees and the Red Sox. There's also the story that, was it 54 when Bobby Thompson hit the home run that the Giants spent the last half of that year stealing signs, and then Herman Franks was and Sal Ivars were very much involved in that.
All right, I got to get to this story. I don't know much about it because I just saw it this morning.
I haven't read the details either.
And I haven't, but just comment on it because I'm going to take this off. This is actually my girlfriend's iWatch. This is an iWatch right here. Okay, if you don't know the story it just came out this morning. I got to do some more research on it. But the Yankees have accused the Red Sox of stealing signs at Fenway Park only when the two teams play, by using an iWatch. And the Red Sox, in turn, are accusing the Yankees of stealing signs by using video at Yankee Stadium. This is, all right, we don't know the details,
right?
But what are your initial thoughts?
It's common. I mean, I think stealing signs is part of the fabric of the game.
Yeah.
I think, for years you heard that how teams, there would be somebody on the coaching staff who was really good at picking up on signs and figuring out people's signs, or players who had been with one team and gone to another that kind of still knew the habits of the coaching staff and what they might use as signs.
But they use an iWatch.
That's
amazing.
Very interesting. I want to learn more about what they're doing. I haven't made the time to start reading specifics on how they were doing it, but it's intriguing.
And I don't know that much about technology, so I don't know if you can use video on an iWatch or take photos. I mean, something has to be, the capability has to be here somehow, the technology.
Yeah, I'm really curious to know more. I mean, there was a time where there were teams accusing the Toronto Blue Jays because of the hotel in the stadium there at the Rogers Center there in Toronto, that they had some guy up in a room in the hotel who with binoculars who was looking at signs and had some way of signaling the pitch that was coming to the hitter. I mean, it's
football, how about the Patriots accused of bugging the opponent's locker room?
And that goes back, everybody thought Al Davis had everything bugged at the Oakland Coliseum. You're right, for years.
I know. Dan, before we go to break, because we talked about this the other day, and you intrigued me with this, and that is the advanced scouting today is so far advanced. You talk about technology with an iWatch. Talk about how that impacts today's game in Major League Baseball.
Well, we were talking about Aaron Judge and some of his struggles since the All-Star break, and I think one of the pieces that I'm curious about is how advanced scouting may play into it. Every team has an advanced scout that's out there looking at the next team on the schedule.
Yeah.
And coming up with a scouting report. And I've seen them. They're very detailed. It's like a New York City phone book with tendencies and whatnot. And what I've always long thought is that if a guy is in a slump for a series, and let's say I'm advanced scouting for Oakland, and we've got the Yankees coming in, so I go to Cleveland to see the Yankees and the Indians, and Judge looks bad. My scouting report is based on Judge looking bad.
So you're looking for a trend.
Right.
Basically.
Well, and how are they pitching him? What's he hitting? If he's not hitting anything, what's your scouting report say about him? So I often wonder about that. If a guy's in a slump, you're just saying how they got him out, and you don't really have an ability to say, okay, they got him out on this pitch because he's getting out on every pitch during that stretch. So it's sometimes challenging. And then when a guy gets hot, you've got a different set of circumstances involved. So I think sometimes hot streaks, cold streaks have a bit to do with advanced scouting and whether they got a real clear picture of what the guy's hitting, what the guy's missing, what type of pitches the guy's seeing, and that is able to contribute to how they pitch to him in the next series.
Yeah, and that's a big one because the American League East division, the Eastern Division, of course, the Yankees and the Red Sox, and I bring this up only because we talked about the iWatch, the stealing of signs. It's a critical back and forth. The Yankees and Red Sox are done with their series, but the Red Sox are up by what, 3.5 games in
Right.
that division with
Right.
3 weeks to go. So maybe it's coming out now because there is so little time, and the Yankees are closing the gap there in the Eastern Division. So we'll see what happens. What other accusations come out of the woodwork? Maybe they're bugging each other's locker room. Maybe they're they're bugging the hotel rooms. We don't know what's going on, but we know that what's at stake. It's the Eastern Division title, a berth in the playoffs, and then eventually, a team wants to go to the World Series. Back with more of Dan Taylor, his book. Of course, we talked about that. We'll talk a little bit about Aaron Judge. We'll talk about Fresno State sports. Back in just a moment. 436 MeTV option 11 in just a moment.
Frigidaire. It means the first electric refrigerator. The first compact electric range. Now, there's the Frigidaire Gallery Range with Symmetry double ovens. It's designed to cook multiple dishes at multiple temperatures, so you can prepare the entire meal at the same time. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
The following is another list of things you will not hear on MeTV programs. Man cave, baby bump, whatevs, double half-calf mochaccino, full hog, redonkulous, totes adorbs, hella, holla, YOLO, cray-cray. And MeTV is still Kardashian-free. This is what you will hear on MeTV programs.
Welcome, Denham. The Twilight Zone. About bulls.
I object, Your Honor.
Mr. Grant.
I hear you right. You heard me right.
MeTV. Thanks for listening.
All right, back here on the program. Dan, I do want to talk about Aaron Judge. Let's roll the videotape. It's called Home Run Judge versus the Red Sox. This was on Sunday. Go ahead and check out the swing, and you will like it if you're a Judge fan and you're a Yankee fan, because this is a 469-foot blast way up there in the left field bleachers. Talk about Judge and his slump the second half of the season. I'll put this call on hold. Hang on, caller. Get to you in a moment.
Well, Aaron had a tremendous first half of the season, and I've been kind of curious as to his second half. I haven't studied him. I was in New York last week, and it was really kind of fun to see, because there's Aaron Judge T-shirts, and
yeah.
I mean, every souvenir store in the city is, you've got your mini Statue of Liberties, and right alongside is an Aaron Judge T-shirt, which is really kind of cool to see. But there were several things that it just. I had a sense pitchers were going to figure him out at some point in time, and I sense that's happened. I've heard scouts tell me that the ball's a little bit different, and I wonder if maybe that's impacted it a bit. Pitchers, my understanding, were having a little bit of difficulty in the first half of the season with breaking pitches because the seams are a little flatter on this year's baseball. So I'm wondering, if maybe they figured that problem out a little bit. And you wonder, there's always that talk that when a guy's in the home run contest in the All-Star game, their mechanics get out of whack because they're trying to elevate and get, hit home runs. And there's certainly been a lot of those guys where that has happened. And there's a little bit of suspicion that, Aaron was pulling out a little bit. That front leg might have been turning a little early, and they've had to go back and correct that. So.
Yeah. And I know I'll get to you, caller, in just a moment, but I got to get into this because we were talking about this during the break. When I was doing sports, I was never a stat guy. I never was big on giving stats, but I will give the Aaron Judge stats, because prior to the All-Star game, batting .369, 30 home runs, 66 RBIs. People were saying this guy's on the way to 70 home runs a year. He's not even going to come close. There's no question about it. Only 3 weeks left in the season. So now, after the second half, that home run video that you just saw was his first home run dance since August the 16th. Okay? And the second half, he only has 8 home runs. He's batting like 177 with like 20, maybe less than 20 RBIs. So quite a difference. But the point I'm trying to make, and maybe you can help me out here, is the stats don't tell the whole story.
Oh, of course
not. I've been disappointed as to why I'm not hearing more about why Judge is slumping. It's not just stats.
No, I think we've. This is my opinion, that we've become a little lazy in reporting, and it's so easy just to rely on stats to frame a story, and I think we've gotten away from the human element and the storytelling part of it. The other side of that is Giancarlo Stanton, who I particularly enjoy following. And you look at the second half he's had now he's got 53 home runs, and he made an interesting change to his stance. One of his big problems is that he had an open stance before, which that leaves the outside part of the plate, leaves you vulnerable, and he he did struggle. He didn't have plate coverage. You know, he was very susceptible to the outside pitches and to breaking pitches. And he's covered that. He's closed that. But I've never heard any story or any reporting about, you know, who came up with this. How long did they have to work on it before he was able to master it?
And who worked with him.
Exactly. And who initiated it? Who made a player willing to make this change mid-season?
Yeah, a superstar player
absolutely.
at that.
Absolutely.
Who is willing
Right.
to make a change. You know, how
Right.
often do you hear that?
And all we hear is numbers, 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 and that's a little frustrating.
Yeah, and I don't know, I was always turned off by numbers, you know, and it turns me off even today, although, you know, I like hearing about Stanton's home runs, you know, he's got 53, Judge has got 38, but beyond that, I don't need to know how many times, you know, Aaron Judge has struck out against a certain Yankee or a certain Red Sox pitcher, or I don't care about those kind of stats. Are we overstating those?
I think so. I think we've gotten just too caught up in it. I think that we've built everything around all these numbers, and I think that it's just gotten silly. I think sometimes you look at that and it's just silly.
Caller, you're on with our friend Dan Taylor. Go ahead.
Dan, real quick, I think the football team going to do well. You know, they're going to play Alabama this weekend over there. Everybody says they're going to get blown out. But you know what? I think they're a surprise. They're going to surprise a lot of teams. You know, they got young players. So he's got them at least 4 years, 3 to 4 years. So whatever he has, he's going to be responsible. But I think he was the right fit for Fresno State towards the end of his career, maybe, as far as coaching. And they're going to draw. That's all I can say. But, all right. This weekend, he did great. Okay,
thank you. I want to get to that in a moment because I want to continue with Aaron Judge, and then I will get to Fresno State. I promise, caller. That was a great question, and I appreciate you calling. We will get to that, but I do want to play a little interview, a little soundbite with Aaron Judge. It's called Humbling Experience, Aaron Judge, an interview that I conducted with him prior to the All-Star game in Oakland, a one-on-one interview with Judge. Now look how humble he is. Just listen to this.
I'm just in a good position right now. You know, I'm blessed to be on a really good team with a lot of quality guys, you know, so I don't feel too much pressure. You know, I'm surrounded by so many quality players on and off the field that, you know, they make my job pretty easy to go out there and just have fun.
How do you keep your wits about you? I mean, you're level-headed, you're mature. Your manager says that you remind him of Derek Jeter when he first came up. You kind of have the same quiet demeanor. You just do your job. And for a young guy like you, a rookie, how are you able to do that?
Just my support group, you know, where I came from, my parents, my coaches at Fresno State, all my teammates, my friends, you know, they're always supporting me and pushing me, and you just always got to remember where you came from, and I try to do that every day. It's a blessing getting a chance to come out here on this field, so I just try to remember that every day.
Two more quick things. What can you tell the people of Fresno that are watching right now? Do you have any message for them?
Keep watching, keep supporting, I appreciate everything, and go Bulldogs.
Staying humble is difficult. And that's a one-part question, and then your manager, Joe Girardi, saying that you're able to hit the ball in all fields, including the opposite field like you did last night. Is that the key to success?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do my part on this team, be a consistent part of this lineup, get on base. You know, the guys that got surrounding me and on this team, you know, all I got to do is get on base and good things will happen. You know, I know they'll drive me in, I know they'll score runs, so they make.
And I want to have Dan comment on that humbling interview that I did with Aaron Judge. He was so polite, so accommodating with his time. It's amazing. And as you comment, I want to have Kerry roll the videotape greeting his fans, Aaron Judge, along the sidelines at the Oakland Coliseum. All these fans that came in from Linden near Stockton. Look at this, Dan. So talk about this humble kid who came from humble beginnings. He didn't come from not from a big city, but a small town.
Well, kudos to his parents.
Yeah.
They did a great job. And all too often when we're celebrating a great athlete, I think we neglect to celebrate the parents, the friends, the teachers, the coaches that built that foundation. And he's a great young man, and it's really exciting to see him represent the Central Valley, not just Fresno State, but also Linden on the big stage, playing for the most visible team and the most visible market in America. It's tremendous what he's done.
This takes time away from his game preparation too.
Well, game prep's done pretty early, and I think John, I think you would agree that he knew pretty well coming into Oakland that he had to make some time.
No,
and we're going to be one or two people there that wanted to have the chance to visit with him. And
there were hundreds there from that Stockton area. It was amazing, and he made the time. So, okay, so Aaron Judge, 38 home runs, and of course, the season, 3 weeks left. We don't know if he's going to, pretty hard pressed to go to 50, but certainly he may go to 40.
Yeah, he's tremendous, and it'll be exciting to see this first full season of the big leagues, a 40 home run campaign.
And now we're going to talk about Fresno State football, of course, in the papers today and yesterday. You had the front page of Nick Saban, the Alabama coach, and I want to roll the videotape. Fresno State football 2017. For about a minute here, we're going to look at some Fresno State highlights from the game last Saturday, and then we're going to take a look at Derek Carr. We'll also talk about Derek Carr in this, but roll the videotape. We'll talk over this. And what do you think? Do they have a shot at Alabama, or is this a pipe dream? What are your thoughts? I mean,
everybody has a shot.
Who knows, huh?
Right. Alabama certainly got a few little injuries, but I think for the most part, they're an overwhelming favorite in this game. And I think at this point, what Fresno State needs to do is just continue growing, continue learning, and prepare themselves for the Mountain West Conference schedule. There's no bones.
Not worry about Alabama,
right.
Just worry about their conference.
Exactly. Well, just worry about improving their game, continuing to improve week in, week out. I think the caller was 100% right. Jeff Tedford was the perfect hire for this job.
Because
they needed somebody, obviously, with Fresno State experience, with an appreciation for the program. They needed somebody who would bring stability to the program, not be looking to move on to another job, because that's a killer for a mid-major program. And they needed somebody with great recruiting connections and who is respected by high school and junior college coaches throughout California. And he was the right guy. He was the absolute right guy. It's great to see how the local talent has renewed their interest in playing at Fresno State. And you had that when Pat Hill really built it, and Jim Sweeney before him, and brought the Carr brothers in, and so many talented Valley athletes. I think one of the exciting things that I don't know how much exposure it got Saturday night was the 77 Stadium Builders reunion. Jim Sweeney's second team, and he's always said that group, they were the Stadium Builders. They were the ones winning that 77 PC2A title that really fanned the flames for Fresno State football and raised the money to build the stadium.
Yeah, they got second billing, of course. This was the Derek Carr,
sure.
Paul George,
the
halftime ceremony, the retirement. There's George with Carr taking a selfie, of course, and a lot of fun. And so that courtesy of the Fresno Bee. Thank you for that. And Dan, what do you make of Derek Carr? Is he going to come back?
Oh, absolutely. Tremendous talent, tremendous person, great work ethic. He's very skilled. I think he's ready for a big season.
Yeah, and so Fresno State has the right coach. They have the right ingredients. They just need to improve their game week in and week out. Don't worry about the score. With Alabama this week, following week, they got Washington, I believe.
Yeah, they go to Washington the week after. And let's face it, those are money games. Those are more about trying to get that budget out of a hole.
Yeah,
that's the priority. I think in terms of Coach Tedford and the players, the priority begins when they get into conference play. If they can miraculously finish 6-6 and maybe get that third Mountain West Bowl game, I think that would get this community turned around. I really do.
You've been at this a long time. One other final thing about Derek Carr. You ever seen a kid like this, that he's so well liked, even by the opposing players? All of his teammates respect him completely, totally. They trust him. They like him. I haven't heard one bad word said about Derek Carr.
Yeah, I have seen it. His brother David, and before that, Trent Dilfer.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think Fresno State has been in a remarkable situation to have three very unique, very special, very highly skilled, and quality character people.
Talking about Aaron Judge, Derek Carr.
And John, we talked about that a little bit a few days ago, how June and July, we were talking about maybe the three biggest stories in sports, involved guys from Fresno.
I know. Roll the videotape before we run out of time here. Paul George signed with, of course, Oklahoma City, and he's got 1 year, and then he says he wants to go to the Lakers. But this is the other Fresno State superstar besides Judge and Carr. It's amazing. I imagine he would end up with the Lakers. Magic wants him.
Yeah, he's from Southern California, and that's where he says he's always wanted to play. But make no doubt the Oklahoma City folks are going to put an all full court press on to try to convince him that that's a great place to finish his career.
Yeah, and you know who might have his ear is Russell Westbrook.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
I mean, you know who they lost? Kevin Durant.
That's right.
So maybe George can fill the bill. But nothing like playing in L.A.
Oh, no, it's a unique experience, and that's home for Paul George, so that's something he wants badly, and be interesting to see a year from now if it comes to fruition.
The book again by Dan Taylor with George Genovese, Fate's Takeout Slide. Go ahead and check it out online, and it's, I got like 20 seconds left. Where online?
Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and coming out October 15th.
Thanks for your friendship, Dan.
Oh, John and yours. Appreciate it.
Thank you very
betcha.
much. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
All right, and come
Thanks.
back again.
Anytime, you know that.
All right, Dan Taylor, a big fan of MeTV and Perry Mason. He's a big Perry Mason fan.
Right.
So how can you not like that? I love Perry Mason, love Dan Taylor. All right, see you tomorrow and Connect with Me.